Acrylic University. Welcome to our Winter Wonderland workshop. I have to tell you, this has been a really fun workshop to work on because I had a whole tutorial set up for you on snow and the color of snow and edges in a snow scene, had it all worked out. And then I realized, okay, in January, I have another workshop coming up on the color of light, and that seemed a little redundant. And then I have a still life course with a whole section on edges. If you'd like to review what I mean about edges, you can look at that still life course. And then Saturday, Renee called me and said everyone loved Teddy Parker's still lifes, the whimsical, wonderful still lives of Teddy Parker. And people would like to see something along those lines. So I, first course, redid everything. And in the process, I made some discoveries and I had a lot of fun. And so I thought I'd share some of them with you. Behind me, back there, you'll see my still life box. If you've already taken my still life course, you'll know this thing is made out of 3 pieces of foam core. I've got a little light on this box, different papers that change the mood. So, and I have it on an old stand that was once used for a big projector. You can put it on anything though, a tabletop. This light is an Amazon purchase, $12.99, and it has a lot of different features. It can go, take a look at the light. It can go colder, oh, and warmer. It can go, oh, you don't want to see the brighter. The brighter will put your eye out. It can go brighter and duller. And you can get just the right lighting you want. You can twist and turn the still life box, get any sort of shadows. That is all in the still life course too. But in the course of doing this, sort of retrofitting this to what people really thought they would want for a Winter Wonderland workshop, um, I came up with not new discoveries, just remembering what I am about as an artist and what I love. So I thought maybe we could start with just a few slides about this and um, looking at some of other people's paintings. So let's get started. Um, oh, I need to press play. Here we go. So for me, this idea of Winter Wonderland really starts in October, in the first frost and the first frozen puddle and cracking through the ice. Um, First big snowfall. Now, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and we don't get a lot of these sunny, snowy days, so they're really rare and beautiful and amazing. If you live in the South, in Southern California or the Southwest, these would even be more rare, I think. But I was thinking about the things that make us happy, and some of the students sent in, or some of the members, excuse me, not students, members of Acrylic University sent in some of their photos of Winter Wonderland and things that made them happy. And it seems like the things that make us happy um, are as varied as we are. And I thought this is a season, no matter how we celebrate, um, to do things that make us happy. I was raised in the woods, and I loved up in the mountains in Washington State where we got lots of crisp, cold, snowy days. In fact, there were days when we could sled off the roof of our cabin and we had to burrow down to get to the door. But there's so many images that are iconic to this time of year. Eves can be packed with incredible beauty and wonder. And it's just a time to gather with friends and to have fun and to enjoy each other's company. or to go for serene and beautiful hikes, or to have some fun in the snow, whatever you like to do in your winter wonderland, besides slogging through the snow on a work day. However you celebrate and whatever you love to do, whatever is in your um, idea of fun, I think that should be included in your winter paintings, whatever it looks like to you. To me, there's some things that I love. I do, however, just really love and adore the work of Teddy Parker. Her whimsical um, ideas really make you smile, make me smile. So I looked around my house looking for stuff that I could do a Teddy Parker like still life. And I came up with a few things, but I realized all my bright, shiny stuff, all of my ornaments have sort of gone the way of my cats, my grandkids, and the moving van. But I love these jingle bells because I put them on my door knobs. All the door knobs have jingle bells on them during the holidays, all winter long, actually, um, to just remind me of joy and people coming over. And I went through my stuff and I just started picking out things that I would look at, and it just I got out the hot cocoa. I put out uh, all kinds of things from uh, to have to sort of set up these things of reflection and whimsy and things that made me happy, and ornaments and ideas that made me happy. And I thought, well, wait a minute, how am I going to put this into a way that we can paint? And first of all, I think that cropping to create negative shape. Now we're talking about not just the things that we love, but how do we put the things that we love into a painting? How do we make them paintable? And that first idea for me was you've got to get the shapes. And that was something Teddy Parker talked about in her interview. If you haven't listened to the interview, it's just wonderful. Um, but take a look at how the shadow shapes break up the space, how cropping creates a way into and through, out of the painting, how cropping off even edges of things allows the negative shapes, meaning the things that aren't things, to have a specific shape as well. I'm taking my cursor around the negative shapes. I hope you can see it. And take a look at how, by just twisting this handle of the cup in a certain way, it breaks up the spaces on my rectangle of my painting shape in an interesting way. And for me, this is really important. The things that are important to me when I was looking around trying to find things to put into a still life, I also realized the things that are important to me are the ways that I paint. So I'm coming back to these little jingle bells because they were important to me. I've had them on my door forever since I was a child. They're all scratched up. And I thought this would be a really good place to start our look at painting things from our lives, things that are important to us. And I would hope that you would set up a little still life stand or take your camera outside and start creating a photo collection of things that are important to you, things that are meaningful to you, and begin arranging them in ways that you could make a painting from. I cut these bells off right here so that I could have these interesting jagged shapes between. I really liked these negative shapes. And I put them on this wrapping paper because they mirrored the detailed shape inside. And I just thought, well, if you can sort of see how I think about putting my still lifes together, how I crop my photos, then it might be easier for you to do the same. So I'm going to go back to me. Here we are.
Hey Diana,
Yeah.
really quick.
Yes.
Could you turn up your microphone volume a little bit?
Yes. Okay. We had some crackling issues before. Now I'm turning it up. Is that better? Can you hear me better, Peter? Oh, I don't hear anything.
Yes, that's better.
Okay.
That's much better. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Peter, we've had a little bit of a sound issue today, and we had to make the choice between Peter talking during my demo and echoing, or having the sound be crackling and fuzzing. So we chose for Peter to remain mostly quiet, and he's gonna text me or message me questions. But right now, I thought I'd go over to my easel, and I'm going to start the demo. And I'm going to start the bell demo right away. And then we're going to, if we have time, I'm also going to do a second demo. If you'd like to paint along with me, I'm just using three colors: a basic red, yellow, blue, and white. Um, and let's go take a look at that. First, let's put up my reference photos. There they are. Oh, I'll duck under them. And now I'll go over to my easel, and without knocking into that still life setup, here I am over at my easel. I thought I had put out some gloves. Oh, here they are. I'm wearing gloves today because I got a cut on my finger, and I'm using cadmium yellow. And I don't like those two things together. They say it's safe. I'm just going to be on the safe side and go ahead and be really safe. I've drawn this out. Now, I don't normally draw things out so precisely, but I drew it out rather precisely this time. I'll move my other canvas away for now, just so it would be an easier time for you to see where I'm going and what I'm doing with this. I'm going to start with a yellow underwash because I had the light on my yellow setting. So the other thing I have on here is I drew some of this in with a little charcoal pencil, which is unfortunate because it's going to get messed up. I'm going to do just a little bit of a yellowy orange underwash because there's warm light on everything. This is the only time I'm going to add water to my paint. Here we go. And I'm just going to put this underwash on and let that be the main undercolor. The next thing I'm going to do, while this is still wet, is I'm going to wipe back this watered down paint so it doesn't get in the rest of my stuff. If you haven't been in one of my classes, I'm going to describe my paints to you and the colors I'm using, and I'm going to mix some colors while this is setting up. I've got cadmium yellow medium. You can also use Hansa yellow medium, Hansa yellow opaque. This is quinacridone primary magenta. This one, the blue, is ultramarine blue and titanium white. And I normally set up my palette like this really simply. I'm going to mix my paints in a color wheel. Now there's no real greens in this, but there is a greenish, like the blue is a little bit of a greenish blue. The color on your screen might be a little different than the color I'm seeing in real life. So if there is a disconnect between what you're seeing, from the camera, I'll take a photo of this later. But what I do is I build my colors around the color wheel because that's the way I can find them best. So you can see here's my primaries, red, yellow, and blue, my secondaries. I don't need much green, so I'm not going to put much green out. It's just like a point that I can see what I'm doing. And if I need to modify any colors, I can use green as a color that I modify. What I do have in here is a lot of soft or neutral oranges. I'm going to mix up a big pile of orange as a mixing point. There we go. I'm going to mix up some red orange, although I don't need a lot of red orange. It's mainly a delicate color that's got orange as a component. Here's yellow, orange, orange, and red orange. Now I've got some variables I can work with. The most color I have there, the biggest amount of color is this blue. So what I'm going to do is look at the blue in light, and I'm going to get my blue out and put white into it to make it what it is mostly, the value. So I'm going to start this mixing of the blue color with the value. Now, when I look at this, it's not the color that I'm looking at that I really like is a little more neutral than this. It's not quite as bright a blue. So what I'm going to do to change that is I'm going to get some of my red orange and put it next to that blue, not in it. If I dump it in the blue, I might ruin the whole pot. So I'm just going to add some little bits of this orange to red orange color until the blue becomes the softer blue that I want and the right value. A little brighter. Here, right in there somewhere. Now I think it might have a touch more green in it than that. So I'm just going to keep building this color. If I hate the color, I can scrape it all back and go back to the drawing board. But I'm going to mix this color and then find some darker aspects of it and some lighter aspects of it, because the color, the value of the color changes from one end of the lit part. It gets lighter and brighter over here and a little darker and richer down to this point. Now I'm going to create some of that dark, shadowy blue that I'm seeing by adding the purple to the blue. And now I'm going to chuck in just a little bit of the green because I feel like that is way too purple. And by adding something with just a little yellow in it, I cut that purple down a bit. Now that's really dark, but I have several values of blue to get started working with. Now I'm going to work on the color of the bells, and they're in normal light, in white light. Those bells are silver, but in this warm light that's happening, they sort of have an orange note to them. So first thing I'm just going to get, there's some parts of them that are very, very light. So I'm going to start with mixing a warm light, a warm bright light. I've got my yellow orange and I'm adding it to the white. And I just peeked over to see if Peter had written anything down in the text line there. Okay, we're good. So I've created some warm white for the lighter areas. And now I'm going to just add some more white to this. I'm not going to dull it until I have to, because white will drop the intensity of the color too. So there is another aspect that I see in the color of those bells. Now, if you have trouble seeing the color when you go to mix, just mix the 3 to 5 main colors that you can see. And don't worry about all the little bits of color. Your eyes get more and more attuned to color as you go. And your eyes, until you get to a drop-off point where your eyes just get tired of the whole thing. And then you have to say, oh, I'm done. And then I see some, like a grayish, reflection-y color in there. I'm going to say it's sort of that. I'm going to alter that as I go. Now you can see I put pretty big blobs of color here. And what I'm not doing is I'm not messing them up. I'm taking the color away from the edges. So when I'm done with this painting entirely, I'm going to scoop these up. Now I get these colors in big jars like that. I can just scoop them up and put them back in the jar. And for the main colors that I use, for my main bits, I have this fishing tackle box, and I'll scoop the colors that I use up normally and put them back in my fishing tackle box. Now these colors, these two colors I don't use in my normal painting, but when I'm doing a painting that is just red, yellow, blue, and we're just dealing with the basic primaries, that's what I like to use. So now that I have these down, I'm going to mix a warm brown, one more color. To create a brown, you mix opposites on the color wheel. So red and green are opposites. Let's see what happens. Okay, there's a warm brown right there. By mixing those two opposites on the color wheel, I get a nice warm brown. If I need more green, I can just mix some more green. By mixing equal parts with ultramarine, you can mix equal parts of yellow and blue. With phthalo is a little bit more of an intense color. You've got to adjust. So now that I have some colors mixed, I'm going to use an old, really beat up cruddy brush to do a little bit more mixing. I'm going to mix a darker brown with my violet, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay in my darks with this brown color. Oh, there was a chunk. This isn't the color that's going to end up on here. I'm just putting in the shadows where I see shadows that are going to go. Oh, you know, I should have drawn in my thing first, but I'll do that in a second. I'm going to just leave these open for a second because I want to draw something. I'm just putting the direction and the line of where my shadows go, where they fit on the form. So we can start to see these as 3D. The way we're going to make these bells look three-dimensional on all this pattern is with shadow. So before I get too crazy with that shadow color, though, I'm going to take some orange and white, and I'm going to just draw. And I'm going to draw them bigger than they need to be, just a little wider, because when I come back in with my shadows, I'll negative shape paint them if that works. Just sort of sketching them in where they go. Now, obviously, I'll need to adapt the color. Ooh, that one should be over a little more. That's all right, because I'm going to negative shape paint around it. These ones I want more yellow in them, more of that yellowy white. I'm just going to draw that in. A negative shape paint around these. I think what I'll do is paint that, do that whole thing, and then put the little blue internal dots in later. Just sketch it in with my orange. Even these guys, those little holes. Okay, now I'm going back to my dark brown, my darker brown, and I'm going to finish just putting in some of these shadow shapes. Where they go. This is an under layer. They're not going to stay brown, I promise. They're not going to stay brown. But I really just wanted a way to talk about where the shadows go. Before I begin, because the shadows are important to this piece, because there is so little form, and the form is so low to the ground that without the shadows, it's not going to look like it's 3D. It'll just look like flat. All right, there we are, some little sketches. And, you know, in one of the fun things about, that I was meaning to say before, about looking at Teddy Parker's work, is that I enjoy her work so much. But I had to realize that I'm not her, and I haven't practiced things the way she's practiced. I haven't built my work in the same way she's built hers. And when I realized that, I was like, I've been painting 40 years. 40. Can you believe that? I have been painting 40 years, and I have built a whole series of practices around what I learned from my teachers. And you can't unlearn that in a weekend. And the other thing is, I really realized that I can appreciate someone's work without having to duplicate it. Mine might not look as whimsical as hers, because maybe she's funnier than me. Maybe she has a better sense of humor. Who knows? But whatever it is, I'm just going to paint how I love. Now, this painting needs to dry for a second, and while it's drying, I'm going to show you what I did to the canvas. I'm going to get out of one of my little 6-inch squares. If you haven't signed up for my 6-inch square challenge, try it. It's going to be really fun. Oh, sorry about that. So what I did was I just took some gesso. I decanted the gesso into a salsa container because I get it in gallon jugs, and it's just hard to manipulate. So I'm going to put a bunch of gesso on here. And I'm just smoothing it on. Look at this. Look at how beautiful it looks on this little panel. That's what I did on this piece to create a little bit of texture underneath. Now, I don't expect you to do this morning with me because it takes overnight to dry. But I thought I'd show you how I get that texture. So if you want to try it on your next piece, you can. Now, this is Utrecht, Utrecht, Utrecht gesso. And look at that, it doesn't come out, it's paste. It's heavy. If your gesso isn't making some texture like this, you can either switch or you can add a little, get a little container like this and mix it up and with some molding paste or some heavy gel or something. But now I'm going to take an old brush. Here's an old beat up paintbrush. And I just put some marks and go ahead and get some fun textural brush marks. The only thing I would say about putting texture on your canvas is to make sure that you don't have any big, like, horrible lines through. Nothing that's too invasive, because that might go right through the most important part of your painting. You want, if you're going to put texture on your canvas, make sure it's part of the underlying support of your overall picture, something that'll help your picture rather than be a thing in its own. I mean, if you want to do some textures just to do textures, it's really fun. But see, I just put that on there, and then you can use anything you want, to flatten or soften some of those lines. You can even let this dry and add another layer. So when you have a painting you don't like, this U-Trick gesso completely covers, so you can just cover it over and start again. I'm going to hold this up. Maybe you'll be able to see it. I'm trying to turn it in the light so you can see the texture I put on there. There we go. When that dries, the paint will adhere to that and stick to it in different ways, and it'll look really amazing. I'll put it somewhere where I won't get it on my clothes. All right, this is probably as dry as I need it to be. So I'm going to start applying the color. Make sure it's all okay. Ready to go. I'm using, this is a 10-inch square, and I'm using a number 8 flat brush. I really like these flats. And I'm going to start with my lightest color. And work my way up to brighter, darker colors. But I am going to layer the color because I think that is more interesting than just flat, one size fits all color. So I'm going to layer little bits of darker and lighter, and just layer the lighter colors more on this end where the light is coming from, and then layer the darker colors more down here where the light is, where the form has moved away from the light. Not quite that dark, but I'm going to layer lighter colors over it as well. And I'm moving fast, especially here. Oh, that's way too purple. Put a little orange in that. There we go. Especially right here where I want a soft edge. And here's, this is why I'm using gloves today. I'm moving my finger through that to create a soft edge. And I can see that color needs to be just a touch lighter to create the effect of shadow. So I'm just going in with my lighter color. And I'm in general. Now this is the way I paint. You don't have to paint the way I paint, but I paint pretty fast when I finally get going, when my colors are mixed up, when I finally get rolling. I paint pretty quickly because I like to have wet paint to work wet into wet. If it dries, I have to overlay and do some other tricky things to keep the edges soft. Now I've noticed on Teddy's work, she doesn't really worry about soft edges. She just puts a mark down and lets it be, and I think that's beautiful. I love those marks, and Carol Marine does the same thing. just puts a mark down and lets that mark just sing and be its own thing. So I'll try a little bit of that today. I might be old, but I can learn new tricks. I just didn't have enough time to learn the new trick all for today. But I'm game. Notice how the color now works. It goes from a lighter blue to a slightly more mid-value blue. Warmer, this warmer blue, meaning it has a little bit more yellow and orange in it, to a cooler blue, meaning it has just a little bit more of the blue pigment in it. Whoa, here we go. How did I just not see that big spot? Same thing down here. I want a little bit more orange in that. Warm it up just a touch. There we go. Now I'm not, since I drew those in, I'm really not paying close attention to them after all, because I'm going to go do positive and negative shape painting. And I'm again working my way up to the lighter color. And I think right up in this upper corner where the light's coming from, I'll make it even lighter. Now I'll mix up more of this dark blue color that's in the shadow. This shadow is really strong because I turned the little lamp up to the highest intensity. I wanted some bright sparkles on these little bells, and I wanted a lot of contrast. So I'm not going to worry about too much at the beginning of the painting. Now, if this was one of my half-hour minis, I would be flying a little. I should have made more of this dark. It's okay. I'll make a whole bunch when I do the final goop up. I love to get goopy. And so when I get to the final stage where I'm really laying the paint on thick and heavy, I will make a whole bunch of it. Now I don't have any black on my canvas today, so if I want a real dark, my darkest colors are red and blue. That's going to make purple. And then I just take a touch of the yellow, just a little bit to knock down the purple, not enough to lighten it. And then I'm going to get a pretty, there's no white in there, I'm going to get a pretty dark. If that is not dark enough, I can do two things. I can add, my favorite blue for darkening things is anthraquinine blue. I can add that. Or I can squeeze some black out on the page, or on my palette, excuse me. I'm already going into nonverbal paint, my nonverbal paint thing. Oh, look, I'm covering up all my drawing, which is fine because I'm going to redraw. And move to a smaller brush for those little details. But I want to get this, I want to keep a bunch of these colors at hand. Someone wants to know, oh, I've just heard Peter text me, so I'm coming over here. Someone wants to know what I'm using. Oh, the brush or the paints or the panel. Which one? I'll tell you everything. I am using a cradled, it's not really wood. This is a MDF product. It's cradled. It came ultra smooth. I like it because I can create my own textures on that ultra smooth surface. And if I can find one that still has the, here we go. It's called a DaVinci Pro Panel Ultra Smooth, 10 by 10, 3/4 thickness. They also come in 2-inch thickness, and I made that mistake one time. Too thick for me. But it comes as smooth as glass. So that's why I put some gesso on it, but that way all the textural marks are mine. But you can paint right on it, smooth as glass as well. It has a beautiful effect. The brush I'm using is a number 8 flat by Princeton, and then the colors are cadmium yellow, quinacridone magenta, primary, ultramarine. Okay, if this is slightly out of focus, let's see. Peter says that the camera's slightly out of focus. Let's see, it might just be my painting. It's possible my painting is slightly out of focus. And it might be that when I held something at a different depth. How are we seeing now? Way better. Okay, maybe I just needed to touch it to make it do what it's supposed to do. Thanks, Peter. He's just texting me because we were having those sound issues, which we will every time we do this remotely, because he's way over in the Seattle area and I'm in Portland, Oregon. Every time we do this, we have a whole different set of issues that come up. It's so funny. I realized I didn't turn my phone off. I better do that, because I do not want it. In this next part, where I'm actually creating form, texture, and pattern, I would really like to not have my phone ring in the middle of that. Thank you very much, phone. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this yellowy white, I'm adding it to the blue, and you can see that it's so diluted that it is not turning the blue green, it's just making it lighter. And I'm creating texture in here because I think the texture is called for and I think it's interesting. I want a little bit more green in the blue over here in some places. So I'm adding that. All right, now let's get busy creating form, light, shadow. I'm going to switch to a number 6 snap brush. Oh, what is Peter asks, what's a good red substitute? So this is primary magenta, just because I made a mistake and bought a big jar of it. I normally use Naphthol Red Light. I think it's a warmer, brighter red. This is primary magenta. It is a quinacridone red color. I'm trying to see the ingredients, but I'm pretty sure this has got a quinacridone in it. So Naphthol red light is actually my chosen red because it's much warmer. You could also use it. I have a little tiny tube of it. I don't use it much. Cadmium red. Cadmium red is much stronger and has better coverage than the quinacridone, but it also has cadmium in it, and I really don't like painting with gloves. So I tend not to use cadmium, but it's a really wonderful red. So those are some great substitutes for this. You don't have to go out and buy something new. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting the planes. The turning planes are warm. So I'm going to start painting the turning planes, and we'll add those spectacular highlights in a little bit. But what I want to do is get these soft colors in the turning planes. Now this is too bright, I know, so I'm just going to take a touch of this brownish color that I made and drop the intensity of the color using that brownish color. But I wanted some of that bright color underneath. When it turns away, red and green makes brown. When it turns away here, there's a little bit of a brown color turning away. Turning planes. So I just messed up my beautiful yellow, orange, white color. Oh. I don't normally stir with my good brushes, but it's an emergency. Now I see a turning plane that's this brown with a little violet in it. My eyes are starting to pick up colors that I wasn't seeing at the beginning. And so this is good. I'm starting to see things. I want to keep the colors bright. One of the things that is fun about painting is you don't have to paint dull. You can keep the colors bright and interesting. Here's a darker brown. A bluey brown, because this is reflecting the blue paper, wrapping paper. I'm just looking where else I can see that color while my brush is loaded up with it. One of the things about shiny stuff is that they reflect everything. So I'm just looking around, seeing what this might be reflecting, where those reflections are possibly coming from. I don't need to know where they're coming from in particular, but it's sort of nice to figure it out. One of the things you'll notice in this trio of colors is how many colors I can get from this. It's amazing. And I am thinking that I may need to add a little touch of black to this, or just a little touch of my other blue to get a dark that's dark enough to be a really good contrast. My other blue which is a much darker blue. Just put it right up, if you can see it up top here. Wait, it's almost off the camera. Um, but that is called anthraquinine or enanthrone blue, and it's a lot darker than ultramarine. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the red and yellow to it to make a much darker black. Way up here off camera, I'll bring it down a little bit. There we go. So I can make some really dark accents that I'll put in later. But right now I'm going to put one of those dark accents right here, right around the edge. So it really pops that out. You could do that with black too, and you wouldn't need to add the other colors. When I paint with black, I tend to make a big mess of it. I tend to get black in everything. So I try to, if I can help it, I try to not use black. All right, let's get some color down where I see the really brilliant spots of reflected color before I start putting in the more neutrals. Here on this band is a bright orange. Here on the turning plane, a nice orange. Here is a yellow orange, yellow to yellow orange. I love these colors. And because acrylics dry a little bit darker, I tend to layer up my colors. I can see what they're going to be, once they start drying, and I'll just, if they dry too dark, I'll just lighten them up a little bit. Put a little white or a little yellow and white in something to lighten it up. If I feel that area has gone dead or dark, but the thing I'm trying most for right now is to create form. And form is created when the shadows and lights are all organized in the right spaces. So just organizing my shadows and my lights. Now, it might sound like I'm a broken record, but that's kind of the deal. Just, oh, look what I did. When I start a painting, when I first get started, the composition, I work on the composition before I start painting. And then once I get the composition the way I like it, then I work on the color palette, the color family, before I start painting. And once I get that color family the way I want it, then I start working on laying in my shadows and lights down on my painting. Fast, if I can do it fast, I'll do it fast. Because that keeps the paint, you can paint wet into wet if you're doing it fast. Ooh, that color is wrong. That's okay. Layer it up. And I'll layer it up and make it right. Now see what's happening in the middle here? Gray. That's what I want, is some shades of gray. When you start mixing all three primaries together, they turn brown, beige, or gray. I can have purpley grays, green grays, blue grays, orangey grays, but now I'm getting gray. And I like it. Now this will, I almost promise, if I just do a terrible job on this, I'm going to apologize. Okay. But things are starting to come together, I think, the way I want them to. So I'm going to start putting more detail down, getting more shadow and light on here, and putting some of these darks in that'll really make it read. So I don't even have a detail brush with me today. So I'm just going to use this is a number 6. I think I do have a number 4 here. There we go. I think I will put my details in with my number 4 snap. I hope I put that on the list. If I didn't, I apologize. I never quite know what I'm going to use in advance. It's always kind of a surprise what tool I'm going to pick up next. Now I thought maybe I would get to the other painting too, the cup, and I think I will. I think I'll be able to. Believe it or not, I would really like to. I really would like to do both of these paintings today because I think it would be really fun for all of us to just have that painting time together. If you have another canvas and you want to do that too, if you are not painting along with me, that's fine. I want to later. This will all be recorded, so there's no problem there. Sometimes it's good just to watch and figure out how you're going to attack the same problems. What are you going to do? How are you going to solve these problems? Because they're all little issues to be solved. So what's going through my mind as I paint is I'm looking at, here I'll get my reference photo out. I'm looking at the different areas in the image, and I'm asking, is it darker, lighter, warmer, cooler? And I decided that this area right here that I'm working on right now is warmer and lighter than the background, than the blue thing it's sitting on. So I'm making it warmer and lighter. Less concerned about the getting the shape absolutely accurate than I am about making sure that the value and temperature are correct. If I feel like the value, temperature, and proportion of stuff is correct, it's going to look right. If the value and temperature are off, it's going to look weird. Okay, hang on. I just heard Peter ask a question. My iPad stopped working, so mine are printed. I have a printer that works pretty good. It has 6 inks plus black, and it works pretty good to get the colors down. Printed material is never as good as iPad. Here you go. Printed material is never quite as good as your iPad because you're dealing with usually 3 colors of printer ink, which are not normally as accurate as your iPad is. The downside is that the iPad has light passing through it and passing through the image. And so you're always going to be thinking that you're painting isn't bright enough because there's not light passing through your image. And so that's, there's plus sides and downsides. But the main thing for me is that even if I segue away from the colors in the photograph or the colors on the page or the colors on the iPad, that I'm making it a beautiful painting. The main thing is I want this painting to look good, and I don't care if it matches my iPad or I used to use my iPad, but it broke down. My grandson dropped it in a way that shattered the screen. So, yay. I won't blame him for everything. He's such a joy to have around. It doesn't matter. What a tremendous spirit. So for Christmas, maybe I'll get my iPad fixed. Wouldn't that be nice? Here we go. So I'm thinking lighter, warmer, darker. See, that's too dark. That dried way too dark now. Too dark and too cool. So I'm just putting some color in there to warm it and lighten it. How's it looking? Is it starting to look 3D? It's hard to know from where I am. Turning plane. Too dark. A little bit lighter. Now, I haven't gotten the bright highlights in, and still working on some turning planes. When we're dealing with these really shiny objects, and I think that the cup will be actually a lot easier because it's not shiny. We're dealing with shiny objects. There's color from everywhere, bouncing from everywhere, misbehaving in all kinds of ways, or behaving in ways we just had not anticipated at all. One of the things, just off that subject a little bit, is I love this cadmium yellow, even though I also keep sort of safe from it. I love this cadmium yellow because it really has a lot of beautiful coverage. It's more opaque than most of the other yellows. If I get too carried away here and lose the form, I apologize. We'll just see what happens. I'm getting close to doing some more of the other details that I really love. And I hope that you're having fun with me. I hope you're enjoying our time together. It's always a little strange to be together but not together. But I do love the opportunity of sharing with you some of the fun and the ideas and the joy I have in painting. One of the things this week as I was looking at what makes a painting whimsical, and I am in no way trying to justify my shaky hand or my weird painting here. Um, one of the things that really makes a painting whimsical is things that are a little out of proportion, things that are a little not perfectly square and true, things that are surprise you because they're so much fun to look at in their out of proportion ways, lines and shapes that are deliciously surprising. Colors that are surprising. I think getting the proportion of things correct is really important, but having the outside edge be exactly, you know, curved perfectly, maybe that's not as important when it comes to a whimsical painting. Here we go. I am going to move to the background now, and then I'll go in for some details um, on these guys here. But I think I'm gonna work on creating some detail and then going back and forth, doing under and over, meaning negative shape and then positive shape. I may need to mix up just a little more so I have some thick paint here. Negative shape and positive shape. Not much left of those drawings I did, but that's okay because they're not the right color anyway. So one of the things about these little details is they go into and out of shadow and light. So what I want to do is make sure they feel like they're in shadow. My first job is making this stuff feel like it's in shadow. Getting it proportionate in a fun way is sort of a cherry on the top here, making it go from shadow to light. If I get too thick, like I just did, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to come back in and negative shape paint in a more detailed way in just a minute. See where this pops out into the light? Right there. I'm exaggerating that. And where it dives down back into shadow, I'll exaggerate that too. Wrong place. And these have a little shimmer to them. And so they do have a little more something going on than what I'm giving them right now. If I have time or inclination, I'll just see about giving them a little shimmer. So what I'm doing to put them into shadow is just throwing a little purple into them. The light is yellow, so the shadow has just a note of purple. And then I'm throwing just a little note of orange into them as they enter the light. Again, I'm not making wrapping paper for the wrapping paper company. I'm creating some fun textures, patterns that are going to hopefully help us talk about the shadow and the light. Now, if I was a photorealist or interested in photorealism, I would be taking a lot more care with all of the design elements, the edges, making sure all of these were photorealistically done, but I'm not. What I want is to find the fun of it, the sort of the joyful middle of this. So I can thin these lines out easier with my brush than I can from the beginning. There we go. Oh, what a mess. What a mess. That's okay. I'm having a delightful time, and I hope you are too. This is so much fun to do. And you can see how the texture has broken up some of these, um, created some broken lines where it would otherwise be a solid line. And I really like that. I like the texture in this. Let's see, I'm remembering how I created that. I want this gone. And I'm going to put that in on top and then negative shape it again. So again, to get these little patterns to go in and out of the light, I'm using a warm color. In fact, it could be more warm, more orange in the light, and a cooler color in the shadow. This purpley, beigey, cool color. In a minute, I'm going to stop ask questions, or have you ask me questions if you want. Not the other way around. No, I'm going to ask you questions. What do you think I should do? How should I fix it? No, you can ask me questions. And we'll just see where we go from here. The main purpose that I had for putting these patterns in was to exaggerate the idea of shadow and light. And so that's why I'm spending a lot of time on these, because I really want the shadow and light to be emphasized. If I just make a brush mark that goes right through, it'll wreck the impression of shadow and light. And now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of breaking up some of those lines. Oh, I just put them in. Why am I breaking them? Well, the reason is because I want them to be downplayed and a little more subtle. And if they're just a big solid line, they could look a little harsh in here. So I'm just downplaying the whole thing a little bit. I got all my proportions all wonky, but I'm not going to worry about that at this point. I just want that design in there to move. There we go. Get some good, bright light. Color moving from shadow to light, light to shadow. All right, a couple more moves here. And then I'll finish the bells. And we'll have a talk. So send in your questions if you have them. I'll stop in just a minute. We'll look at what I have so far. And just a sec here. I just heard my message go boop. So we'll take a look at that in just a second here. Okay, I'm coming over. I'm going to switch over to me. And I'm going to answer. Oops, there I am. Oh, I better get rid of those for just a second. There we go. Okay. Here's a good question. You use gloves for cadmiums. I wonder if the quinacridones and the phthalos are also poisonous and should be gloved also. And I look at the back of each paint jar, and it has a poison rating. And if it says on the back that, I guess the state of California has some really strong regulations about what's poisonous and what isn't. So look at the back of the jar, and usually they're rated. The state of California says this is safe, or the state of California says this is a known carcinogen. Well, my hands get really, really sweaty and icky inside gloves, so I tend to not use them. And most of the colors that are on my palette I've chosen because they have a safety standard, so I can go ungloved. But I thought it was important today because I had the cut on my finger and I'm using cadmium. Uh, and also for vanity because I was making cookies with my grandkids and got um, food color all over my hands. So there's that, but mainly it's the cadmium. I don't want it on my hands. Even though many manufacturers say it's safe to use, I am really careful with how I dispose of the water. I am careful with where I dispose of things when there's cadmium. And that's all. Okay, Phthalos, there might be poisons. I wouldn't eat any of it or drink any of my swish out water for sure. But most acrylic paints dry on the surface of your hands and can be just peeled off. They don't soak in. So I wouldn't worry about that so much. Um, I'm just worried about the cut on my hand mainly, and because I don't want it to I don't want it to soak in anyway. Um, the other thing is that shadow light lessen the reason the bells are positioned high on the canvas as they are? That is an excellent question. The reason I positioned the bells high on the canvas is because I really liked the pattern and the negative space created. And yes, that big long shadow coming down across the picture I thought was interesting. And it put the bells up into the focal point area when I positioned them high. It put so that was one of the main reasons I cropped it like that was just to have some interesting shapes around. And when we go to the I'm going to just spend a few more minutes on this, like 5 more minutes, and then I'm gonna at least lay in the other painting because I think you'll see how fun it is. Um, Now these workshop photos and also the ones I had posted, I am giving to you uncopyrighted. Most of the time, um, most of the time, everything on acrylic U is copyrighted, and so just use it to give to a friend or use it for practice, use it for your own enjoyment. But these photos, particularly to this workshop, are yours to have. Uncopyrighted. They're my gift to you. I spent all week photographing them, making cookies, making hot chocolate. Oh, it was such a pain to have cookies and hot chocolate around. So, but they are yours to use however you want. Just remember that if you use them, there'll be a bunch of other people who have exactly the same painting as you. So change them and make them yours anyway. But we'll get right back to this painting. Um, where do I dispose of the water? That is a really good question. Um, Now, I'm hooked up to a city sewer, and that I put in the city sewer because I hardly ever use cadmiums. So, um, when I was on a septic, I built a disposal unit that had activated charcoal and all kinds of stuff in it. If you go to golden.com, the Golden Acrylic website, they have a whole tutorial on how to build a rinse water system that will take the contaminants out of your water. Um, and when I'm on location, I use only a little bit of water to swish my brushes in, just a tiny bit. Then I take all of my used paper towels, soak up that water, and leave them out to dry. Once the paint is dry, it's inert. And so when I'm plein air painting, I never let that, I never dump that water out into the ground. I just soak it up in my paper towels, let the paper towels dry out, throw them away. It's fine. But go to that site. The Golden site is just a font of information, and you'll find out how to build a wastewater um, thing for yourself. And I had one for years, and it was when I had a septic tank, and it was great. So anyway, that's that. I'm gonna just work real quick on this. Start the other painting. You can see what I'm talking about, and here we go. And, don't be afraid. The main thing is the reason I chose the other paints that I have on most of my paint lists is that they are not toxic. Because I ended up with a huge blue streak down my nose that I wore the entire day. No one told me. Or, paint all over the place. Look at my paint shirt. So I just, I need to be careful and choose my paints carefully. I'll go back over. I'm going to put the references back up and go back over and work on this thing just a little more. We can see it sort of coming to pass. It's starting to look something like a something. Um, I worked on this. I did a copy of this the other day, or not a copy. I did the first version because I wasn't sure if I could even do it. I've been so busy. Have you been busy too? I've been so busy that I got myself a little bit out of practice. And I can really feel when I'm out of practice. I all of a sudden don't have it in myself. When I haven't been practicing in a regular way, I lose my confidence. So I feel like it's important to practice every day just so you don't lose your confidence. So you don't lose how you feel about yourself, because confidence is a huge part of this. Confidence is really important. Um, it's your main tool. If you think you can, you're more likely going to be able to. If you think you can't, that is going to be a huge stumbling block. You still may be able to if you think you can't, but it might be extra hard. So, and what practicing as often as you can fit it in does is it lets you know that some things are hard, but you can still do them. That if you really, really put your mind to it, some things are hard, but it's okay. You just have to develop some schemes for how to solve some problems. And everybody's schemes will be a little different. And then that creates the uniqueness in your painting. Your paintings won't look like anybody else's because you solve your problems differently than everyone else does. I'm sort of finding some delight in that. A few more little highlights, and we're going to call it for now. And I'll show you the other painting I did the other day because it's more complete. These little sparkles are really important to me. I love them. You can see just how much darker this paint dried. And I'm getting it down to the right value now. And it's not a problem. It's part of the joy of this paint is that you can layer and layer and layer almost instantly because of the nature of its drying time. So even though it does dry a little darker than sometimes than we'd like, you can just layer up more lighter paint. It's okay. My grandson was telling me he just finished a huge Lego project. He's 6, and he got a Lego set for his birthday in June that was way too much for him. It was meant for a 14-year-old kid, and he just finished it. And the pride he had in it was so amazing. And he said, you know what? This was really fun. And he said, shouldn't everything you do really be fun? And I was like, yes, it should, especially things that you do for enjoyment. Yes, they can be frustrating, and yes, you can tear your hair out. But yes, it should also be really fun. You should be having a joyful, fun time. And it is fun, this problem solving, trying to figure out how to solve the problems in your painting is really fun. It can be if you let it be. It's very satisfying when you come up with a solution that no one else ever thought of. It can be extremely gratifying. So much more here I could do, but I want to move on just a little bit. And I hope that you don't mind me moving on. I am going to put a few more highlights. If you do, click now. If you mind. A couple more highlights, a couple more lowlights, and we'll move on. I keep saying that, and I keep promising, and then I see something else. Oh, there's a dark spot right there. There's a dark spot right there. There's a spot that dried too dark right there. So hopefully what happens when all the pieces are together in the right way is that it looks like bells, they look three-dimensional, and they look jolly. That's the joy, the goal for this one is these little bells. My 3-year-old, am I talking about grandkids too much? Oh, sorry. My 3-year-old grandson strapped some of these bells to his ankles the other day and marched around the house all day with a parade with the bells jingling, jingle, 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 jingle all around, and it drove everyone else crazy except me. I loved it. It was such fun. I got out a drum and we had a parade. Okay, there it is for today. The jingle bells. Now, I have another one, and it's going to be so much easier. I'll show you when I painted yesterday. Okay, I painted these kisses. This is the reference photo. And I realized I didn't like all of this negative space. So I threw in a zigzaggy pattern right there. I'm not sure I liked it, but what I did like was all the little dots on these. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. I will fix up that zigzag pattern and then post that. Here's my drawing for the hot cocoa. Oh, I think I took about 50 photographs. Here's a new palette, same colors. New palette, same colors. And again, I have a printed out sheet, which is a little bit different in color than the projected sheet that I see, but it is what it is. And I'm going to put a nice warm wash down again, because again, this was warm light. Now the whites on here look a little bit more white, but I'm still going to put on sort of a warmish orangey yellow wash over the whole thing. Now this one I'm going to do something I do with almost all my paintings. I want you to see if this is something that would work for you. I put a mid-value wash on. Did you just get a headache from the turn I took from one painting to another? Get a neck brace. Ah. So what I do is I do my mid-value, put it on there. I take a wet paper towel and I start wiping back every place that's white, that's light colored. A 1, 2, or 3 on the value scale. I'll wipe that back. Any place. Any place that's a 1, 2, 3 on the value scale, I'll wipe off, including up here. And then I'm going to add back the darks in a more simple way than I did on the other one. Just pull off some of that. What I'm doing here is I'm giving myself a clue as to what the values are in this painting. Everything that remains this orange color is going to be a mid-value in some way. Everything that has been blotted away is going to be a 1, 2, or 3 on the value scale. There's still a lot of room on that value scale. If you have a good value scale, you can get it out and look at it. I'm seeing if I have one close by. I normally keep one right at hand. And of course, I cleaned up. Here's an old beat up one with the paint all over it. So everything that I've just wiped away is going to be a 1, a 2, or a 3 on the value scale. Everything that I've left orange is going to be a 4, a 5, a 6 on the value scale. Now, I'm just going to mix up a really simple dark color. Because everything that I just am painting dark is going to be a 7, 8, or 9 on the value scale. And what I'm looking for here is how do my darks connect? The reason I cut these cookies off right where I did is because they create connections both to the side of the composition and around. Your eye is going to be able to flow around these darks and find their way through the painting, jumping around on the darks. If you just are confused by this a little bit, there is a course that I wrote in composition for Acrylic University. You have access to it in your courses, and you can figure out what I'm talking about if you haven't had any prior access to composition. That will be a good intro to you. So I'm really looking for my darks. What is dark on here? What's darker than mid-value? And that I'm just painting in, and I'm going to really just rip through this. It's simple. The colors are simple. The design is simple. And we don't have a lot of time to make it complicated. So we'll try to keep it simple. And notice I'm doing this with a big brush. So I don't have any room to complicate this with a little detail. It's all going in with a big brush. Okay. Now with this simple paint structure, I may want a warmer color. Since I already have cadmium out here, I occasionally will use a drop of cadmium orange if I need to brighten things up. I'll save that as an option, but I probably won't need it. And I may need a drop of my my other blue to make things dark, but I probably won't need that either. All right, and there's not a lot of big crazy mixing to do. There's not a lot of neutral colors like there were in the other one. So I'm just gonna mix some reds, light reds. Now this light red is pretty pink. It's a little, so I'm gonna just add a touch of yellow to it to warm it up. Light red, medium red. There's only one green in the whole picture, so I'm gonna just go right through where my greens go. There's medium red. There's a deeper red. The medium red also, I'm just gonna put a touch of yellow in. Oops, too much. Just to warm it up because there's warm light touching it. So I'm just throwing in a little bit of warmth into everything that warm light is touching. Medium red. And then the dark red, I'm just going to darken with blue. There we go. Dark red. Now I've got one little touch of green in here. So equal amounts. This time I wanted it more blue-green. So a little more blue in it than yellow. Not a problem. And then I have some shadows on my white marshmallows. Oh boy, this hot chocolate sat out there for 3 days. It really got gross. So, so what I'm doing here is I'm mixing up a little bit more green because I need some brown. Adding red to it until it turns that dark brown hot chocolate color. It's really easy to make neutrals when you're dealing with red, yellow, blue. And the nice thing is they kind of all go together. They look like they all belong in the same family. So there's a dark brown, and let's get some lighter colors out and a white that is tinted just a little bit on the warm side. Here we go. Ready to go. I just think I might need a little bit more of my light red. Okay, ready? I think we need a timer for this because we're going to go flat out as fast as I can paint here. I'm going to start with my number 8 flat. Maybe I'll start out with a number, whatever this is. It's covered up. It's a 10. I'm going to start with my number 10 flat. And I'm going to start with the color that's most obvious to me, the bright red. Oops. The red and light. The mid-value, bright red. Now I'm going to put in its shadow, the red with blue. It's not going to be as dark as in the photograph because I feel like this photograph darkened that color up a little too much, darkened that shadow up. So it's not going to be quite as dark as the photograph. But I am going to go like an absolute house on fire for just a minute here while we get these colors down as fast as humanly possible. The other painting took a lot of detailed, there was lots of little detail in it, and it was a bit of a challenge. This one is less detail, more shape, less of a challenge. So again, my light's coming from the top down. And so this, whatever this is, this material underneath the cookies goes from a lighter red to a richer, darker, brighter red as it moves away from the light, both here, here, and here. That's going to create a feeling of more light passing across here. Woohoo! Woohoo! Okay, I'm going to just start creating darks and lights everywhere. That's a little bit too green of a cocoa for me. Ugh. There we go. I don't know about you, but green cocoa sounds like something some beautiful grandmother would make full of spinach. Oh, it's cocoa, really? Honest. And what I'm doing is just filling in all the spaces, dark, medium, and light, like I created them just a minute ago. I'm gonna soften this edge and soften this edge. I'm noticing that the outside edge of this, I didn't catch it at first, but the outside edge of this cup is darker than the background. So I made it a little bit darker. The inner edge is darker and richer. So that needs to be a little bit lighter and a little bit less intense of a color. That color intensity is such an important thing when you're looking straight down on something, because by adjusting the color intensity just a little bit, you can make things look like they're getting further away. And when something is duller, it looks slightly, did you see how this cup started looking like it was coming more forward? That handle is totally in the wrong place. I'm going to replace it. Take a look at what I mean when I put this rich, bright color on the rim of the cup. And it's a little warmer here, or a little lighter here. When I put that rich, bright color there and then drop the intensity with white, I don't want to gray it. I don't want it to be a gray intensity. I just want it to be less bright. This pops forward. It looks like it's coming up. And I'm going to keep my eye both on the clock and on the shadows and lights. Paying attention to what's in the light. There's a few little details of these little sprinkles and things we'll get to in a minute. But we're already starting to see this take shape a bit. The image start to come to pass just a little bit. Now I'm making a lighter brown color. Might need to be pinker. That just, green cocoa just looks gross to me. There's a white line in there we'll get to. Isn't it amazing how fast this is coming when we're dealing with shapes instead of details? It's amazing how fast this is coming along. I'm going to work on a few of my whites, get them in place. That's not quite as white. It's a turning plane. This is darker. This is darker. Cast shadow on that marshmallow. Means it's a little darker. This shadow on this one is being cast by the cup. Darker. Now, light. This is all in planes. The lit plane is the plane turning closest towards the light. The turning plane is a plane that's turning slightly away from the light. Cast shadow is something being cast by the cup or the other marshmallow. This is so much fun to play with light because you can see the forms starting to happen right before your eyes. And I haven't really veered too far away from this number 10 brush yet. So I'm still working from a number 10 brush so that I get these shapes in big. I like these big, 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 big shapes. But I am, that saying, I am moving now to a smaller brush. I'm hardly ever, when I'm painting for myself, even aware of changing brushes. I just grab whatever I think is the most important brush to me at the moment, and I go. And it's sort of fun to have to step back and really pay attention to that because people want to know. Well, there's an interesting thing happening in the shadow side of these cookies in that there is light bouncing up from the red tablecloth into the shadowed side. So I put a little bit of red into this browner color and creating a shadow that gives this depth. Isn't this amazing how fast this is going with a big brush and big shapes, big ideas, big shapes, big brush, big everything. That has a little more orange note to it. Okay, I think we're ready for some details. Don't you? Some details and really thick paint. I think this painting needs some thick lights. Get a little more swirl on that. And none of this paint has actually really dried yet. It's all still really wet. The interesting thing about the light is that it's cooling off as it moves away from the viewer too. So back over here, the light's a little bit cooler. And I just overemphasized that a bit. I'm going to put on some details and then it's snack time. Isn't it fun how few colors there are mixed? So now I'm seeing those sprinkles. And I'm going to have to add a few little dots of other color. Dots of white to give them the sparkle. But I have to be careful too that I don't go dot, 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 dot and try to make them into dots. It's a form like any other form. It just has more texture in it. So what I'm doing is I'm squinting and looking at where this form goes. And then for the detail, I will probably even move to yet a smaller brush. I don't like this color yet. Not a big fan of that color. I think it's too cold and purple. So what I'm doing is adding green, a little bit of green to that color. So it's not quite so blue and purple. And I'm going to add a little bit of red to it. Just smush it into it so that it doesn't feel too disconnected from the red tablecloth. Like I said, I think my camera, because the lights were so bright, made the shadows really dark, almost black. And that is a feature of a camera. I feel like that should be just a touch lighter and warmer, but maybe not. I like the brightness of it. I like the rich brightness of that color. So here we go. I heard Peter ask a question. Oh, where am I going to put the handle? Well, that is an excellent question. I almost forgot about the handle. It just was slightly off in my drawing, so I'm putting it right here. All I need is a dark, a light, and a highlight. And there's a handle. It's sort of fun when you see all these little pieces that are disconnected being connected by the idea of shadow and light become something that is creating the illusion of three depth, a little bit more light. There we go. A little bit more light back here. All right, now I'm going to a smaller brush again for those little dotted details, the little cinnamon dots. And I want a couple, like there's a few lines here that are just not real great. I'll use a smaller brush to get those lines. Might need to scrape that. Haha. I kind of love these marshmallows. And this foamy stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just place them. Then I'm going to give them, like there's 3 right here. I'm going to put these all in a group. There's one all by itself over here. Caring less about the roundness as the placement, the size. I'm going to give them a light side and a shadowed side and a shadow in just a minute. I don't have to put on every one that's here, but I think they're fun. They were put on, decorated by little hands, so I think that's really fun. Now for a shadow. And they have a little cast shadow too, so I'll throw in a little cast shadow. How are we doing for time? Oh, I'm 7 minutes out, but I think I can be done with this in about 3 minutes if you're game. If you're game. Little bit of a cast shadow and a form shadow. They're a little messy, but I think that's okay. Here's the shadow of that. Give these guys a little form shadow, a little cast shadow. I'm going to give them a little extra pop of brightness in the middle and a little highlight. And then they're going to just stand out like crazy. Haha. Oh, that's funny. Now just a little bit of some shadow. Turning plane. Right cup. Excuse me. And some green. This might be the time to come in with a little phthalo. We'll see. Oh no, this is just fine. Oh, I made a mess right there at the end. Ha ha. It's the gloves, I tell you. I'm going to blame it on the gloves. I'm going to just put a little bit more spots. a raggedy edge on some of this. And thick paint. Thick paint will be the thing that makes it also look like it's coming forward. When you have such a short depth, you need to use all the tools at hand, and thick paint is one of those tools that you can use to make things look like they have more depth. Bright colored paint. Let me try a little touch of that cadmium orange, and then we'll sign off. Because what I want to do is make the rim of the cup, where it's bright, really bright. So I'm just mixing that red paint with the cadmium orange to brighten it up. Oh, look, that's what I wanted. For it to really pop out and up. Okay, guys, well, I think that's all the time we have. Now, I'm going to let Peter, you can ask me questions about this, and Peter can send them to me, and I will be happy to answer anything that we have time to answer right now. And if you don't have any questions, that's just fine. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful winter season. I will be back with you with my Color of Light, the magical Color of Light workshop in January, in which I will take the course that I have taught on the Color of Light, available to you. Available to you at Acrylic University, and I will expand on it. There we go. What do you think? I'll take this off now. Cocoa and cookies, waiting for somebody who wears jingle bells to come and take a bite. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging with me and joining me in 2 demos this morning. I can take these off now. Here's a question. What is the best tool to use for mixing? I prefer my color shaper because when I mix it, it tends to damage the bristles a little bit. And when I use a palette knife, I tend to drag my knuckles in the paint. So my Catalyst color shaper is great. I'll go get it, show it to those of you who didn't see it before. Oh, and there's another question. There we go. Get it in front of the light. Here's my there we go. Catalyst color shaper. When it's new, it comes looking a little better than this, but just has a rubber tip, and I can mix really well with that. The other question is, what are you thinking when you choose Catalyst brush over a snap brush? Well, I prefer snap brushes. I've used Catalyst brushes before, and they tend to splay out on me faster, but the snap brushes tend to last a lot longer, and they're cheaper. And so I tend to go with the snap brushes because I can, as long as I don't leave them soaking, sitting on their heads, I can keep them lasting longer, and they have a nice crisp edge. I know Jed swears by the Catalyst brush, and he obviously uses them right. I must be doing something wrong because I always end up with getting them looking like a tangled mess. Oh, the best size, here we go, size for color shaper. This is a 3/4 inch. Um, and I also have a 1 inch, and I love them both. This 3/4 inch is just right for mixing colors on a palette. And it's also great for the minis. If you're going to join me and or Jed, you can do both for the minis. I use a color shaper in a lot of my minis, so they're really great for those little 6 inch panels. But they also work on a big piece. I have a bigger spatula when I'm working large that I scoop up and just scoop the paint on with a color shaper on a large piece. Um, anyway, so this, if there's no more questions, I'm just so happy you joined me today, and um, I probably will post a few more of those photographs I took for this class on the Facebook page for you to use however you want, um, and copyright free. It's my gift to you, and I would really love for you to see what you do with some of these images, making them your own, or taking the idea of the, where is it, the still life box, and taking some of your own precious treasures, putting them in a still life box and photographing them, and seeing what you can come up with, seeing how you can crop them to make a dynamic design in shadow and light. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful month, and I'll see you in January. Thank you, Peter, for everything you've done for me. And we'll get the sound thing figured out by next month, and you can join us in voice as well. All right. Goodbye for now. Thank you.